Nathan Stone was dreaming of board meetings and profit margins when his phone shattered the silence. The screen glowed in the darkness, showing an unknown number. For a moment, he considered ignoring it. At 42 years old and CEO of Stone Industries, Nathan had learned that nothing good came from midnight phone calls. But instinct made him answer. "Mr. Stone?" A woman's voice, professional yet urgent, filled his ear. "This is Nurse Patterson from Memorial Hospital. I apologize for calling so late." Nathan sat up, his heart already racing. He lived alone in his penthouse apartment, his daughter Sophie staying with her boarding school friends for the weekend. "What's happened? Is it my daughter?" "No, sir." "This concerns a woman named Claire Bennett. She was brought in an hour ago following a severe car accident. She's in critical condition." The nurse paused, and Nathan could hear the beeping of hospital machines in the background. "Before she lost consciousness, she spoke your name. You're listed as her emergency contact." The name hit Nathan like a punch to the chest. Claire Bennett. He hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 12 years. Memories he'd buried deep came rushing back, threatening to overwhelm him. His hand gripped the phone tighter as he struggled to find his voice. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he managed to say. Racing through the past, Nathan dressed quickly, pulling on jeans and a sweater without thinking. His mind was elsewhere, traveling back through time to a small office in downtown where everything had begun. Claire Bennett had been his partner in every sense of the word. Together, they'd founded Bennett Stone Technologies, a startup focused on medical software that would revolutionize patient care. Claire had been the brilliant mind behind the technology, while Nathan handled the business side. But she'd been so much more than a business partner. Her laugh could light up the darkest days. Her determination inspired everyone around her, and Nathan had fallen deeply in love with her, though he'd been too afraid to admit it back then. The city streets were empty as Nathan drove through the rain. His luxury car seemed to mock him, a symbol of everything he'd gained and everything he'd lost. 12 years ago, he'd made a choice that changed both their lives forever. A major corporation had offered to buy their company, but only if Nathan took full control and pushed Claire out. The money had been staggering, enough to build an empire. The betrayal that never healed. Nathan remembered the day he'd told Claire about his decision. They'd been in their small office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in her brilliant ideas. Her face had gone pale as he explained that he was accepting the buyout, but the deal required him to claim sole ownership of their technology. "You're choosing money over us?" Claire had asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Over everything we built together?" "It's not that simple," Nathan had argued, though even then he'd known it was exactly that simple. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We can start something new later." But Claire had seen through his excuses. "There is no we anymore, Nathan. There never really was, I suppose." She'd gathered her things and walked out of his life, leaving him with a successful company and an empty heart. Arriving at the Memorial Hospital loomed before him, its windows blazing with light against the dark sky. Nathan parked and rushed through the emergency entrance, his usual commanding presence drawing immediate attention from the staff. "I'm Nathan Stone. I received a call about Claire Bennett." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly at his name. Nathan Stone was one of the city's wealthiest men, his face regularly appearing in business magazines. "Yes, Mr. Stone. Please follow me." She led him through sterile corridors to the intensive care unit. A doctor approached, her expression grave. "Mr. Stone, I'm Dr. Williams. Thank you for coming so quickly." "How is she?" Nathan demanded, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't quite hide. "Ms. Bennett sustained severe injuries in the accident. She has internal bleeding, broken ribs, and a head trauma. We've stabilized her for now, but the next 48 hours are critical." Dr. Williams gestured toward a window. "You can see her, but only briefly." The woman he'd never forgotten. Through the glass, Nathan saw Claire surrounded by machines and monitors. Her face was bruised and swollen, partially obscured by an oxygen mask. Tubes and wires connected her to equipment that beeped steadily, measuring her fragile hold on life. Despite the injuries, Nathan recognized her immediately. The years had added maturity to her features, but she was still the woman who had captured his heart all those years ago. "Can I go in?" Nathan asked, his throat tight. Dr. Williams nodded. Just for a few minutes. Nathan entered the room and moved to Claire's bedside. He wanted to take her hand, but was afraid of disturbing the IV lines. Instead, he simply stood there, looking at the woman he'd betrayed, the woman who apparently still thought of him after all these years. "I'm so sorry, Claire," he whispered. "For everything." The name that changed everything. A nurse entered to check Claire's vitals. Nathan stepped back, giving her room to work. "Excuse me," he said. "When Claire spoke my name, did she say anything else?" The nurse glanced at him with sympathy. She was barely conscious, but she did say something else. "A name, I think. It sounded like Sophie." Nathan's world stopped spinning. Sophie. His daughter's name. But that was impossible. His daughter was 13 years old, born to his ex-wife Jennifer 3 years after he and Claire had separated. There was no connection between Claire and Sophie. Or was there? "Are you certain she said Sophie?" Nathan pressed, his mind racing. "Yes, sir. She said your name, then Sophie, then something about the truth. After that, she lost consciousness." Nathan sank into the chair beside Claire's bed, his thoughts in chaos. What truth could Claire possibly have about Sophie? His ex-wife had full custody after their divorce, and Sophie spent most of her time at an exclusive boarding school. He saw his daughter during holidays and occasional weekends, trying to be a good father despite his demanding schedule. A stranger arrives. "Mr. Stone?" A woman's voice came from the doorway. Nathan looked up to see a young woman with dark hair and worried eyes. She wore casual clothes and carried a large purse, as though she'd rushed here in the middle of the night. "Yes? I'm Jessica Moore, Claire's assistant and friend. The hospital called me as well." She moved closer, studying Nathan with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I know who you are, Mr. Stone. Claire has told me stories." "Has she?" Nathan stood, trying to maintain his composure. "What kind of stories?" Jessica's gaze was direct and unflinching. About a man she once loved who chose his ambition over her heart. About a brilliant partnership destroyed by greed. But also, she hesitated, about a sacrifice she made to protect someone she loves. "What sacrifice?" Nathan demanded, stepping closer. "What does any of this have to do with Sophie?" "Everything," Jessica said softly. "Mr. Stone, there's something you need to know about your daughter. Something Claire has kept secret for 13 years. Nathan felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The beeping of the monitors seemed to grow louder, and the sterile hospital air felt suffocating. Whatever Jessica was about to tell him, he knew with absolute certainty that his carefully constructed life was about to crumble. "Tell me," he said, his voice barely steady, but before Jessica could respond, alarms began blaring from Claire's monitors. Medical staff rushed into the room, pushing Nathan and Jessica aside as they worked frantically to stabilize their patient. Nathan watched helplessly as the woman who held all his answers fought for her life, taking her secrets with her into the darkness. The medical team worked with urgent precision around Claire's bed. Nathan stood frozen in the corner of the room, watching as doctors and nurses moved in practiced choreography. Numbers flashed on monitors, machines beeped frantically, and orders were called out in medical terminology he couldn't understand. Jessica gripped his arm, her face pale with fear. "Her blood pressure is dropping," one doctor announced. "We need to get her to surgery now." Within minutes, they were wheeling Claire out of the room. Dr. Williams paused briefly at the door. "We're taking her back to the operating room. There's internal bleeding we missed earlier. It could be several hours before we know anything. I suggest you both wait in the family lounge." Nathan nodded numbly, unable to form words. As Claire disappeared down the hallway, he felt something crack inside his chest. The woman who apparently held the key to understanding his entire life might die before he could hear what she needed to say. The waiting room confession. Jessica led Nathan to a small waiting area with uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a harsh, unforgiving glow. Nathan couldn't sit. He paced back and forth, his mind spinning with questions and fears. "You said Claire made a sacrifice," Nathan finally said, turning to face Jessica. "You said it had everything to do with Sophie. I need to know what you meant." Jessica took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mr. Stone, what I'm about to tell you will change your understanding of everything. Claire made me promise never to reveal this secret unless something happened to her. She looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. I think we're past that point now. Nathan moved closer, his heart hammering. Tell me. Sophie isn't your ex-wife's daughter, Jessica said quietly. She's Claire's. The words didn't make sense at first. Nathan stared at Jessica, waiting for the punchline, waiting for her to explain the misunderstanding. But Jessica's expression remained serious, sad, and absolutely certain. That's impossible, Nathan said. I was married to Jennifer when Sophie was born. Jennifer was pregnant. I was there at the hospital. Were you there for the entire pregnancy? Jessica asked gently. Did you see the ultrasounds? Attend the doctor appointments? Nathan's mind raced back 13 years. He'd been building his empire, working 18-hour days, traveling constantly for business deals. Jennifer had complained about his absence, but he'd assured her it was temporary. When she'd told him she was pregnant, he'd been surprised, but pleased. But had he actually been present? Had he witnessed the pregnancy firsthand? A deal made in desperation. Jennifer couldn't have children, Jessica continued. She'd been told years before you married her. When Claire discovered she was pregnant with your child, she was terrified. You'd just betrayed her, taken everything you'd built together, and made it clear that business meant more to you than anything else. Nathan sank into a chair, his legs suddenly unable to support him. Claire was pregnant? With my child? She was going to tell you, but then Jennifer approached her. Your wife knew about the affair, about the feelings between you and Claire, even if nothing physical had happened. Jennifer was desperate to save her marriage and keep you. She offered Claire money in exchange for the baby. The room seemed to tilt. Nathan gripped the armrests of the chair, trying to process what he was hearing. Claire sold our child? No, Jessica said firmly. Claire made an impossible choice to protect her daughter from the man you'd become. You'd already shown you would sacrifice anything for success and power. Jennifer convinced Claire that a child would ruin your career, that you'd resent the baby, that Sophie deserved a stable home with two parents rather than a single mother struggling to survive after you'd stolen her company. The life that should have been. Nathan's mind flooded with memories. Claire, working late nights in their office, her hand unconsciously touching her stomach. He'd thought she was stressed about the business. The day she'd tried to talk to him about something important, but he'd cut her off, too busy with the corporate buyout negotiations. The look in her eyes when he'd chosen the money over their partnership. So Jennifer passed off Claire's baby as her own? Nathan asked, his voice hollow. It was a private arrangement. Jennifer went away for several months, claiming she wanted privacy during her pregnancy. Claire gave birth in a small hospital 3 states away. Jennifer was there to take Sophie home, and Claire walked away with a settlement that allowed her to start over. But the money, Nathan said, remembering how Jennifer had suddenly wanted a divorce 3 years later. Jennifer got a massive settlement in our divorce because she held the ultimate secret, Jessica explained. If you'd fought the divorce, she would have told you the truth about Sophie. She gambled that you'd rather pay her off than deal with the scandal and emotional complexity. Nathan felt sick. His entire adult life had been built on lies and manipulation. The daughter he'd been an absent father to was actually his child with the woman he'd truly loved. The woman who'd raised Sophie had blackmailed both him and Claire had spent 13 years watching from a distance as another woman raised her daughter, Claire's hidden sacrifice. How do you know all this? Nathan asked. How can you be certain? Jessica pulled a folder from her purse. Claire kept everything. Documentation of the arrangement, medical records, DNA samples. She wanted Sophie to know the truth someday when she was old enough to understand. Claire has watched Sophie from afar all these years. She attends every school event, sitting in the back where you never noticed her. She knows Sophie's favorite books, her dreams of becoming a doctor, her struggles with math. Nathan took the folder with trembling hands. Inside were photographs of Sophie at various ages, but these weren't the posed school pictures he had framed in his office. These were candid shots of Sophie laughing with friends, concentrating on homework, playing soccer. In several photos, he could see himself in the background, oblivious to the woman who must have been taking the pictures. Claire built Bennett Medical Solutions after you took everything from her, Jessica continued. It's smaller than your company, but respected in the industry. She could have exposed you, ruined your reputation, fought for custody of Sophie. But she didn't want Sophie to grow up in the middle of a scandal. She didn't want her daughter to know she'd been sold like property, even if the sale was an act of love and desperation. The weight of regret. Nathan stared at a photograph of Sophie at age 7, missing her 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera. Behind her, barely visible, was Claire, tears streaming down her face. The pain of watching your child grow up without you, unable to claim her, unable to hold her, was captured in that single frozen moment. Why did Claire ask for me tonight? Nathan's voice broke. After everything I did, why would she want me there? Because Sophie is asking questions, Jessica said. She's 13 now, the age when kids start looking for adoption records or DNA tests. Sophie knows something isn't right about her birth story. Jennifer has been increasingly nervous, and last week she cut off all of Sophie's contact with you, claiming you're a bad influence. Nathan's head snapped up. Jennifer did what? She told Sophie's boarding school that you're no longer allowed to visit or take her for weekends. Sophie is devastated. She thinks you've abandoned her. The pieces fell into place. Jennifer was trying to maintain control of the situation by isolating Sophie from him, and Claire, knowing the truth couldn't stay buried much longer, had been planning to finally tell him everything. The car accident had simply forced the revelation to happen sooner. A letter from the past. There's something else, Jessica said, pulling an envelope from the folder. Claire wrote this letter years ago. She updated it every year on Sophie's birthday. She wanted you to have it if anything ever happened to her. Nathan took the envelope with hands that shook. His name was written on the front in Claire's familiar handwriting. Inside was a letter several pages long, dated just 2 months ago. Read it, Jessica urged. But maybe not here. The surgery will take hours. Go home, read what Claire wanted to say, and then decide what kind of man you want to be. For Sophie's sake, if nothing else. Nathan stood, clutching the letter and folder to his chest. If Claire wakes up, call me immediately. No matter what time it is. I will, Jessica promised. But Mr. Stone, Nathan? Claire never stopped loving you. Every choice she made, no matter how much it hurt her, was made out of love. For you and for Sophie. I hope you understand that when you read her words. Nathan left the hospital as dawn broke over the city. The rain had stopped, and the world looked washed clean, though he felt anything but clean. His entire life had been a lie built on another lie, and the only person who could have told him the truth years ago had sacrificed her own happiness to protect him and their daughter. He drove home slowly, the letter burning like fire in his jacket pocket. When he reached his penthouse, he poured himself a drink he didn't want and sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city he'd conquered. The same city where his daughter was being kept from him and where the woman he'd betrayed was fighting for her life. Finally, with shaking hands, Nathan opened the letter and began to read Claire's words. Words that would either destroy him completely or give him a chance at redemption he didn't deserve. Nathan's hands trembled as he unfolded the pages of Claire's letter. The first lines were dated 13 years ago, just weeks after Sophie's birth. Her handwriting was shaky, evidence of the emotional turmoil she'd been experiencing. My dearest Nathan, the letter began. By the time you read this, you'll know the truth about Sophie. You'll know what I gave up and why I made the choices I did. I need you to understand that none of this was about punishing you or seeking revenge. It was about protecting our daughter from a world that wasn't ready for her. Nathan continued reading through blurred vision. Claire described the moment she'd discovered she was pregnant, how she'd been terrified and overjoyed at the same time. She wrote about her plans to tell him, about the hope she'd carried that maybe a baby would remind him of what truly mattered in life. Then came the painful parts. Claire described watching him choose the corporate buyout over their partnership, over her, over everything they'd built together. She wrote about Jennifer's unexpected visit, the cold negotiation over a child who hadn't even been born yet, and the impossible decision she'd faced. I could have fought, Claire wrote. I could have exposed everything and demanded my rights as Sophie's mother. But I looked at the man you'd become, consumed by ambition and power, and I couldn't bear the thought of our daughter growing up watching you resent her for derailing your precious career. Jennifer promised Sophie would have everything: stability, education, opportunities, and a father who might eventually learn to be present. I convinced myself I was being noble, but the truth is simpler. I was broken and scared, and I took the coward's way out. The years of silent love. The letter continued through the years, updated entries marking each of Sophie's birthdays. Nathan read about Claire attending Sophie's first day of kindergarten from across the street. About the time Sophie fell off the monkey bars and Claire had to watch from a distance as Jennifer comforted their crying daughter. About Sophie's brilliant performance in the school science fair when she'd built a model of the human heart, never knowing her biological mother was sitting in the back row, crying with pride. "She has your determination and my curiosity," Claire wrote when Sophie turned 10. She asks questions about everything, challenges assumptions, and refuses to accept simple answers. "She's going to change the world someday, Nathan, and we gave her life, even if we couldn't give her the truth." In the most recent entry, written just 2 months before the accident, Claire's tone had shifted from melancholy acceptance to urgent concern. Jennifer is scared. Sophie is asking questions about her birth, about why she doesn't look like either of her parents, about why you've become so distant. Jennifer has started cutting you off from Sophie, trying to maintain control of the situation. "I can't let this continue. Our daughter deserves to know who she really is, where she comes from, and how much she's loved. I've decided to tell you everything, Nathan, not because I want to disrupt Sophie's life, but because she needs both of us now more than ever. I pray you've become the man I once believed you could be." A father's awakening. Nathan set down the letter and stared at the sunrise painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. He'd spent 13 years being a mediocre father to a daughter who deserved so much more. He'd missed the signs that Sophie wasn't Jennifer's biological child because he'd been too absorbed in building his empire to pay attention to the people who mattered most. His phone rang, making him jump. Jessica's name flashed on the screen. "She's out of surgery," Jessica said without preamble. "It went well. Dr. Williams says she's stable, but she hasn't regained consciousness yet. They're moving her back to the ICU. I'm on my way," Nathan said, already grabbing his keys. But first, he had one call to make. He dialed Sophie's number, his heart pounding as it rang. His daughter answered on the third ring, her voice cautious. "Dad? Mom said you weren't supposed to call me anymore." "Sophie, sweetheart, I need to see you. It's important. Is everything okay? You sound weird." Nathan closed his eyes, thinking about all the lies and half-truths that had defined their relationship. "No, everything isn't okay. But it's going to be. I promise you that. Can you meet me at Bennett Cafe this afternoon? The one near your school?" There was a pause. Sophie was smart enough to know something significant was happening. "Okay, 2 o'clock?" 2 o'clock. "And Sophie, I love you more than you could possibly know." "I love you too, Dad." Her voice was small, confused, but hopeful. The woman who sacrificed everything. Nathan spent the morning at the hospital, sitting beside Claire's bed as she slowly began to wake from the anesthesia. Jessica had gone home to rest, leaving Nathan alone with the woman who'd given up everything for love. Around noon, Claire's eyes fluttered open. She looked disoriented at first, her gaze wandering around the room before finally landing on Nathan's face. Recognition flooded her features, followed quickly by panic. "Nathan?" she whispered, her voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "Sophie, did they tell you about Sophie?" "I know everything," Nathan said gently, moving closer to her bedside. "I read your letter. All of it." Tears spilled down Claire's bruised cheeks. "I'm so sorry. I should have been stronger. I should have fought for her. For us." "No," Nathan interrupted, taking her hand carefully. "You did what you thought was right to protect our daughter. I'm the one who should apologize. I chose ambition over love. I became exactly the kind of man who would have destroyed both of you with my selfishness." Claire squeezed his hand weakly. "You can still be the father she needs. That's all I wanted, Nathan. For Sophie to have you in her life. Really in her life." "I'm meeting her this afternoon," Nathan said. "I'm going to tell her the truth. About you, about me, about how much you've loved her all these years. And then I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this right. A new beginning, Doctor." Williams entered the room, smiling at the sight of Claire awake. Miss Bennett, you gave us quite a scare, but you're going to recover fully. You'll need time and rest, but you're going to be fine. Relief flooded through Nathan. Claire was going to live. They were going to have time to fix the mistakes of the past, to build something real for Sophie's future. Rest now, Nathan told Claire. When I come back tonight, I'll tell you about my conversation with Sophie. Our daughter deserves to know her real mother. Claire's eyes widened. Nathan, are you sure? The scandal, your company. Jennifer will fight this. Let her fight, Nathan said with conviction he hadn't felt in years. For once in my life, I'm choosing what matters. Stone Industries will survive without my constant attention. But Sophie and you won't get these years back. I've already wasted 13 years. I won't waste another day. Meeting Sophie. At 2 o'clock, Nathan sat in Bennett Cafe, his heart racing as Sophie walked through the door. At 13, she was becoming a beautiful young woman. She had Claire's eyes and his stubborn chin. How had he never seen it before? Hey, Dad, Sophie said, sliding into the booth across from him. You look terrible. What's going on? Nathan took a deep breath. Sophie, I need to tell you something important. Something that's going to change everything you thought you knew about your life. But I need you to trust that everything I'm about to say comes from love. Sophie's eyes widened, but she nodded. Okay. Your mother, Jennifer, isn't your biological mother. And there's a woman in the hospital right now who's been loving you from a distance your entire life. Her name is Claire Bennett, and she's the bravest person I've ever known. As Nathan told Sophie the whole truth, he watched emotions play across her face, shock, confusion, anger, hurt, and finally, understanding. When he finished, Sophie was crying, but she reached across the table and took his hand. Does this mean I have a real mom who actually wanted me? She asked through her tears. You have a mother who wanted you so much that she sacrificed her own happiness to give you what she thought was the best life possible, Nathan said. And you have a father who's going to spend the rest of his life proving he deserves to know you. Sophie wiped her eyes. Can I meet her? My real mom? She's at Memorial Hospital. She was in an accident, but she's going to be okay. And yes, sweetheart, she's been waiting 13 years to meet you properly. Love redeemed. That evening, Nathan brought Sophie to Claire's hospital room. When Claire saw her daughter walking toward her, really seeing her for the first time as her child, she began to sob. Sophie ran to her bedside, and Nathan watched as mother and daughter embraced for the first time since Sophie was a newborn. I have so many questions, Sophie said, holding Claire's hand. And I have 13 years of answers, Claire replied. Smiling through her tears, Nathan stood back, watching the two most important people in his life finally together. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be legal battles with Jennifer, media scrutiny, and difficult conversations. But for the first time in 13 years, Nathan felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. He'd built an empire on betrayal and ambition. Now he had a chance to build something far more valuable on truth and love. As he watched Sophie laugh at something Claire said, Nathan silently promised them both that he would never again choose anything over the people he loved. Some chances at redemption come disguised as tragedy. Nathan's had come in the form of a midnight phone call and a woman who'd never stopped believing in the man he could become. Now it was time to prove her faith hadn't been misplaced. The future stretched before them, uncertain but filled with possibility. And for the first time in over a decade, Nathan Stone felt truly wealthy. The end.